Is the Sony ZV-E10 still the best camera for YouTube beginners? That's what we're gonna find out in this video. So first, the Sony ZV-E10 is a pretty beginner and budget-friendly camera with some pretty cool features. For example, it has a flip screen, a pretty cool autofocus with even a product showcase mode, a streaming mode so that you can use it as a webcam for your PC or your Mac. It's actually one of the features that I use a lot for my gaming channel. It also has a pretty cool defocus button, so if you're a beginner with cameras and you don't know how to get a blurry background manually, you can just press the button and then you get a blurry background. I think this camera is made for many different types of content creators. You can use it for live streaming, for aero footage like this footage, and you can also use this camera as a vlog camera, as you can see right now. So this is what it looks like when you're vlogging with the Sony ZV-E10 in 4K 24. And also I'm using a tripod with this camera because you can't hold it just in your hands and vlog with this camera. It's pretty difficult to hold this camera with the kit lens because the kit lens is pretty small. When I'm shooting in 4K, I also like to shoot in the custom lock profile. Even when you're vlogging in 4K, the profile is pretty good. You just need to make sure the exposure is right. With this profile, I like to overexpose 1.7 stops. When I'm vlogging with this camera, I'm using the picture profile off preset, but I turned down the sharpness and some of the contrast, so it looks way better than just a normal profile. If I want to shoot an SLock, you can actually shoot an SLock with this camera, but I would recommend to use a custom profile with SLock 2 and S-Gamut 3.Cine, because when you're shooting in SLock 3, you're getting some artifacts, and also that's the same with S-Gamut with SLock 2. It's just not made for this 8-bit codec, so it doesn't work that well. So when I'm shooting SLock, I'm using my custom profile. When I'm shooting aero footage, like this footage, I'm shooting in 4K 24, but if I have a lot of movement in my shots, for example when I'm vlogging, I like to shoot in 1080p with 60 frames per second, because the rolling shutter is not as bad as in 4K. The stabilization of this camera is okay, but it doesn't have IBIS, so I'm just using the stabilization of the lens. But this camera also has electronic stabilization, so if you activate active steady shot, you have a lot more stabilization. But when I tested it, it didn't look that good because it got wobbly and stuff, mainly because of the rolling shutter, so it looks a bit weird. So I try to avoid using this. Some pretty cool things about this camera: it's pretty small, so you can take it everywhere you want to go. And even with the standard profile, the quality of this camera is pretty good. And when you're using this camera a lot, you can feel that it's specifically made for content creators, because you got some quick modes, for example S&Q mode. You just press this one button and you're in slow motion mode. And also the product showcase mode for autofocus is pretty cool. If you want to show something in the camera, it focuses on an object instead of your face. So if you like to do a lot of product reviews, this is the perfect camera for you. The battery life of this camera is pretty okay. It's not the best battery life, but I think it's enough for about half a day for me. You can also charge this camera while using it with the USB-C port, so it lasts way longer. But when you're in a hot environment, the camera starts to overheat really fast. But when it's, for example, when you're shooting outside and it's cool outside, you shouldn't get an overheating warning. Also a big problem with this camera is rolling shutter, because as I already said, in 4K it's a huge problem with rolling shutter, because you get a lot of rolling shutter. You can avoid it by using the camera on a tripod and not moving it, or you can try to shoot in 1080p because the rolling shutter gets better with that. But at the end, it's a pretty beginner and budget-friendly camera that I can recommend to everyone that wants to start making content. If it's for TikTok or YouTube or some other platforms, you can use it really good for almost everything. But if you have a higher budget, I would recommend to buy a different camera, for example the Sony ZV-E10 or one of the even newer Sony models that just came out a few days ago. But I didn't test these cameras, so I don't know much about them, so you might have to find it out yourself. But if you want to get this camera, the link is in the description. And now if you want to know how to color grade Sony ZV-E10 footage, you can click on the video on the screen right now. Thanks for watching and see you guys in the next video.